When I was told that I was autistic in the 1980s, I'd hardly even heard of autism. I certainly didn't know anybody else who'd been diagnosed, and my teachers in school were none the wiser either. Now, in 2021, I know at least 6 other autists in my workplace alone, and other colleagues who have autistic kids. Where did all these autistic people come from? Mine was the last generation to grow up in a world where autism was barely known. There was no autism spectrum until the 1990s, so for kids like me growing up in the 1970s and 80s, getting an autism diagnosis was such a rarity, it made my parents react like I'd been struck down with an exotic tropical disease. If I said the words autism or autistic to anyone, they usually asked me to repeat myself, and then often to spell it and explain what it meant. In the 1980s, people like me were thought to be 1 in 10,000, yet by the turn of the century, I was 1 in 150. Around that time, older people started remarking on how there were no autistic kids back in their school days, yet they seem to be in every classroom now, and started wondering why. The first and most important factor in this apparent increase was nothing more than progress. Leo Kanner's 1940s seminal view of autism was very different from what we recognise today. In Kanner's time, autism was seen as rare, difficult to understand and even harder to identify. Autistic kids weren't expected to grow up and live independent lives. That started to change in the 1980s when Lorna Wing speculated on a wider definition of autism that looked beyond Kanner's primitive boundaries. By the mid-1990s, the concept she introduced of an autism spectrum was added to the official diagnostic manuals. This new understanding kicked off the first wave of autism diagnoses as the goalposts suddenly became much wider. The trickle of early diagnoses like mine that had carved a channel for change became a deluge, then a flood. Children who didn't fit into traditional stereotypes, particularly in the areas of education and socialisation, started being referred to psychology departments rather than subjected to escalating regimes of punishment and exclusion, as was common. To anyone who didn't know or didn't understand the impact of the huge step forward in understanding of autism at the end of the 20th century, it might have looked like autism was on the rise. What was actually just another advance in our understanding of how human beings work was transformed by the media, the rumour mongers and conspiracy theorists into an autism epidemic. That was only the start of it. Presumably, the sudden increase in numbers of identified autists would peter out as all those children who qualify for an autism diagnosis under the new definition would be identified, and we'd see a steady flow from then on, albeit in higher numbers than before. But the numbers kept rising. The official estimate of 700,000 diagnosed autists in the UK hasn't been updated in nearly a decade, yet this figure is still quoted everywhere from pub banter to government strategy. There's been improvements in diagnostics since then, 5 million more people added to the population, and we now have waiting lists for diagnosis stretching into years, so we really do need to see this figure looked at again. In the US, autism prevalence is calculated by the CDC. Instead of overall population, their estimate is of the number of children already diagnosed as autistic by the time they're 8 years old. When the UK figure of 1 in 90 was published in 2012, the US was reporting 1 in 69, both having risen from 1 in 150 12 years earlier. Not as dramatic as the initial jump from 1 in 10,000, but the figure had still doubled in that time. This second wave in the early 2000s is the consequence of awareness campaigns. The progress made in medical and psychological understanding of autistic differences made a huge impact on its own, but it takes time for new knowledge to filter into the public consciousness. Children who would previously have been written off as maladjusted at worst or puzzling at best are now far more likely to be singled out as potentially autistic. New educators entering the profession are given some very basic training in recognising neurodivergences like autism, dyslexia and dyspraxia as a matter of course. That understanding gives them the confidence to raise such possibilities, and in some countries the authority to make referrals. Unlike my parents' generation, 21st century parents have already heard of autism before the subject comes up with a doctor or teacher. Ironically, the false panic caused by the famously faked link between autism and the MMR vaccine probably did as much to prompt parents to seek autism diagnosis for their child as the innumerable awareness campaigns run by charities. We're now in the 2020s, in the midst of a third wave, which has nothing to do with the medical establishment, owes little to the education system, and has no direct connection to government, charities or mainstream media. When I connected to the fledgling World Wide Web in the mid-1990s and got my first mobile phone, people laughed at me. "What are you wasting money on those for, you nerd?" people asked me. "It's a fad. They'll be gone in a couple of years." Then went back home to their VHS recorders, cassette players and landlines, secure in the knowledge that their lives were future-proof. Now, it puts us at a disadvantage if our internet access is slow or patchy, let alone being without it altogether. And internet-capable smartphones are in the pockets and handbags of the vast majority of adults and children in wealthy countries. One of the first things I did when I got a dial-up connection was to see if there were others like me out there, and I found them. In those early days, I learned so much about what it meant to be autistic. Things I had assumed to be typical of autism turned out to be just my own personality quirks, but others were surprisingly common amongst us. We talked about how we thought, how we experienced feelings, and how we sensed the world around us. A picture emerged not only of what behaviours distinguished us, but of the confusion, frustration, and hostility from others that lay behind them. We also realised that most of us seemed to bond with each other quite readily, and had few of the communication problems we experienced with non-autistic people. Many of us racked up huge bills on metered internet connections as we talked into the night, getting to the bottom of who we are rather than just what we are. As social media caught on, another thing dismissed by the same naysayers who said the internet itself would be a flash in the pan, we formed communities. Even before Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, there were autistic groups on MySpace, Bebo and even Friends Reunited. Right now I can reach into my pocket and instantly talk to other autistic people in social media groups or on hashtags. I can read blogs by other autists and take in podcasts or videos like this made by autistic people about autistic life. I went for more than a decade in the 80s and 90s without knowingly meeting anyone else who was autistic. Yet now I can interact with thousands whenever I want. It's this community which laid the foundation for the third wave of autism diagnosis. When people actually bother to pay attention to what autistic people say about our lives and the ways in which our thoughts and feelings shape our interaction with the world, some people see themselves. The media is still caught up in the idea of autism as tragedy, but even people with that at the forefront of their minds still wonder about themselves as more and more of the autistic world seems to echo their own lives. You see, autism is more than a diagnostic list of behaviours. It's a way of understanding and interacting with the world based on a different system to the one we've been conditioned to see as normal. The behaviours are the external presentation of minds that aren't easily categorised. The way we solve problems is different. The way we feel and understand emotions doesn't always conform. Even the sights, sounds and words we hear might not trigger the same neural pathways as common wisdom would suggest. Whether we were diagnosed as children or not, autistic people often feel alienated from much of the human experience as it's portrayed in the media. Often, an adult will realise that they share more with the autists they meet online than the people they live and work with, which sets them on a road to discovery. Some will self-identify as autistic and leave it at that, but most go down the road of formal diagnosis. Every diagnostician that I've spoken to has told me that when adults come to them seeking autism diagnosis, 90% or more are confirmed, and most of them tell similar tales of a life being misunderstood, excluded, and punished for things they still don't understand. Even now, there are 2 to 3 times as many children diagnosed autistic as adults, yet adults outnumber children by a similar amount. We live far more years as adults than as children, but because the spectrum wasn't recognised in our childhoods, or the people around us wrote us off as antisocial or lazy, far more of us went unidentified than got a diagnosis. The third wave of autism diagnoses is those adults who were missed as children, realising what it is that singled them out all these years and seeking understanding. They're not afraid of diagnosis. They just want to know if the disconnection they felt all their lives can be explained. We know without any doubt there are far more undiagnosed autists out there struggling and coping in silence than those who've had our differences confirmed, and as knowledge increases and stigma decreases, ever more will come forward. The scientific establishment has been playing catch-up to the autistic community for at least 2 decades, picking up on our observations and adopting them as their own theories to take the credit in honorifics, residencies and academic tenures. What we have learned about ourselves is gradually being proved, accepted and adopted as standard practice, but we still have a long way to go. It's thought that 1 in 30 people are likely to be autistic, but some will be scared of finding out while there's still an industry profiting from the fear of autism and making billions from peddling bogus therapies and quack cures. Until they are gone, and our understanding of autism is good enough that no child goes unidentified, we'll never know just how commonplace and how normal being autistic actually is. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, you'll be pleased to know that new Autismatic content comes out every Wednesday on YouTube at 9 PM UK time. You can help keep it coming by supporting the channel on Patreon for as little as £3 or $4.50 in the US per month, or treat yourself to some of our themed merch. You can subscribe on this link here or watch another video over here.